Hello YouTube, this is Let's Talk Horror and welcome back to another video. Okay guys, so in today's video, I just watched a movie the other day called The Substance, and I wasn't really planning on reviewing it. I know this was a big movie in late 2024, but it kind of slipped by me. But I wasn't planning on reviewing it, but this movie is so out there and so batshit crazy and takes so many wildly different directions that the synopsis does not do justice for that I had to jump on here. I had to review it. So real quick, before we jump into all of this, I have to say that if you have not seen this movie, I highly recommend that you go into this movie blind, only read the synopsis like I did, watch it, and then come back and watch this review. Do not watch this review before you see this movie, because that, to me, is the best way to experience it. I went into this thing completely blind, only knowing what the synopsis was, and I came out blown away. And I'm going to say it, guys, I love this movie. I love this movie dearly. I think it's a new horror classic for me. I didn't know what to expect going in, but man, this is truly something. So I'm going to read the synopsis, but you've had your spoiler warning. You've had your warning, because I probably will be discussing spoilers in this, and we will then jump right in to my positives and negatives. So here we go. Let's get to it. Here's the synopsis for The Substance. Elizabeth Sparkle, renowned for an aerobic show, faces a devastating blow on her 50th birthday as her boss fires her. Amid her distress, a laboratory offers her a substance which promises to transform her into an enhanced version of herself. So again, that synopsis does not do it justice. I read that before watching the movie and I thought, oh, okay, I don't really know why this is like the new talk of the town, but oh boy, just watch. This gets pretty crazy. So here we go. Let me get into some positives and negatives regarding The Substance. And I guess my first positive is just the overall message of the movie and how they explore that. I've often heard complaints that the overall message of the movie is not subtle, and there is some truth to that, but it doesn't need to be. It still explores the themes in a brilliant, creative way that I enjoyed watching. Just the overall message about the pressures of getting older and unattainable beauty standards, especially for women, was explored very well here. It makes you wonder, aging is the most natural thing in the world. We, as humans, all do it every day. Why do we put such a stigma on that? Yeah, that's what it made me think. Like, why, as humans, do we put such a stigma on getting older? Why do we put such a priority on being young when we really can't control that? We're all getting older every day. We're all aging every second of every day. There's just not much we can do about that, yet we bring ourselves down and put such a stigma on aging, and especially as this movie explores with Hollywood, with Elizabeth Sparkle, someone who in this universe has accomplished so much and was such a huge star, but now that she's past her prime, now that she's hit that certain number, she's got to go, and they got to bring in someone newer and younger and the new flashy young thing. And it just, that really does feel like how Hollywood operates in real life, that, you know, once you hit that certain age, everything you did in the past doesn't matter, and you're just kind of pushed aside for the new, shinier thing. It's really sad, and it's kind of a fucked up culture that we have in Hollywood and in society sometimes when it comes to aging. And I liked how the movie kind of explored that. And then to piggyback off of that, I love the performances in this movie, and particularly Demi Moore's performance in this movie is incredible. You really see the agony that her character goes through throughout the movie. The movie has more weight, considering Moore is still a very beautiful woman in this movie and at this stage in her life. This feels like a very personal role for Moore, as she has probably felt much of the same treatment that her character feels. Margaret Qualley, I believe her last name is. Her performance is also great as she plays Sue as the young, vibrant, but ultimately selfish part of the character. So yeah, these two characters really battle, or I should say these two parts of the same characters really battle throughout the movie. Which is fun. And yeah, Sue is she's young, she's vibrant, she's the new hip thing, but she's also very selfish, and we see how that goes. Now that I'm here, I should probably mention there are some rules. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video, that these two parts of Sue, they each get 7 days to be out in the world. They alternate. So for a week at a time, the balance and the timing is very important in this movie, and it's abused with some very real consequences. So I feel like I needed to mention that in this review. And then going off that, as I said before, the battle between these two parts of the character is entertaining to watch. For Elizabeth, she has extremely mixed feelings about Sue. On one hand, Sue is the only chance Elizabeth has to experience her past career success at this current stage of her life. On the other hand, Sue is also a constant reminder that the world no longer loves her for who she really is. In this world, the image of Sue always haunts her, even keeping her from going out with an old friend from high school who practically worships her because she is too consumed by her own insecurities, which is another great acting job by Moore. Meanwhile, Sue has nothing but contempt for Elizabeth, stealing time away from her with some side effects. So that's what I mentioned about, the rules, of course, and how Sue doesn't always follow the rules. Sue often stays out in the world longer and stays in control longer than her allotted week time frame with some side effects. And yeah, that scene I'm talking about, one of the standout scenes by Moore in this movie where, Elizabeth Sparkle, she meets this old friend from high school when she's just out and about one day, and he practically worships her. He's practically in love with her. It probably was his high school crush, and he gives her his number and hey, let's go out and get a drink. And you can tell she's kind of at first put off by this. He's kind of a nerdy guy. He's not the most attractive guy in the world. When we get to that scene, she finally calls him up because she wants to feel attractive again. The real part of her wants to feel attractive again. So she calls him up. She's like, hey, let's go get a drink. And she gets all gussied up. She's ready to go. And then every time she's about to leave, she sees the image of Sue on a billboard outside her apartment as the new hot young thing, and she can just never find a way to leave the house, and she always has to redo her makeup, and she feels she's not living up to these very unattainable standards of beauty because she views herself as past her prime, and it's a very heartbreaking scene. She just can't quite live up to it in society's eyes and Hollywood's eyes, and if she goes out, she's probably going to be compared to Sue. She can't find a way to leave the house, and she just stays home and kind of blows this guy off, even though this guy is practically ready to worship her. So it's a great sequence, and it's a great scene, and really drives home the performance by Demi Moore here. And so yeah, that battle goes on. That battle continues to go on, and then we actually get to the consequences of this battle. To go off that, once we actually get to the body horror part of this movie, this is Cronenberg level body horror. When you think you've seen it all, this movie takes it one step further. The finale, the last 25 to 30 minutes of this movie, will stick in your nightmares for weeks and months to come. Oh yeah, once we get to the body horror part of this movie, once we get to the actual consequences and Sue's selfishness finally catches up to her in the last act of this movie, it's great. In the last 25 to 30 minutes, there's a cheesy element to it, and I think you'll see, but it's still fun and it's still exciting to watch. And the last 25 to 30 minutes, it's probably the signature part of the movie for us horror fans, especially body horror fans, and it will stick with you for a long, long time. And it's after so much build up and seeing the battle between these two sides of the character. And then to go off of that, the way this movie ends, it kind of drives home the point that these two sides of the character, they both want it all and they can't have it all. We see there are two selfish sides of both the older Elizabeth part of the character and then the younger Sue part of the character. Sue tries to think she can have it all. She can have all the time and she can stay young forever and be in control, and that's just not how life works. As I said, you grow older, we're growing older every day, and she pretty much tries to stay young forever, eliminate the older part of the character, and we see what consequences that has in the finale. And then for Elizabeth, she kind of is selfish, and partly because, seeing Sue's success drives her insecurities, and partly because she just wants to fuck things up for Sue. Whenever she's in control, all she does is, sit on her ass and cook and eat food and watch TV all day. That's pretty much all she does because she was fired from her job. And again, that's partly just to fuck things up for Sue and fuck up the apartment, but it's also because of her own insecurities. And that's another lesson, is you can't do that either. Even when society says, oh, you're too old, it's not your time anymore, you still have to find a way to genuinely enjoy life and get the most out of life. In a weird way, both selfish sides of the character both got what they deserved at the end, and kind of a bittersweet ending for the Elizabeth Sparkle character, that, the selfish side of the character drove her to where she is at the end of the movie, but it's also kind of like she's free and she can move on, which is what I've seen how some people have interpreted the ending. So yeah, I think the ending was pretty well done, and it really drives home the final message of the movie, that maybe we shouldn't worry about age so much, because there's so much we can't control about age. At least that's how I read it. But because I really don't have anything negative to say about this movie, honestly. By the way, Dennis Quaid's performance is also absolutely outstanding in this film as kind of the sleazy TV executive. It would be criminal if I somehow hopped off here without mentioning him, although he plays a somewhat smaller role in the movie. This movie is carried by Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. The only thing I found weird is that it's not just an actress, it's like a famous aerobics show instructor, which I thought was kind of very 1980s, but I guess it goes with what the Elizabeth Sparkle character is, that she made her fame and made her success when home workout videotapes were very popular in the 80s and 90s, and they're just not as popular anymore. And with Sue, it's more like a dance video, music video type of style. So I thought that was interesting, but a little weird to me. I guess maybe that's the thing that was a little off-putting, but this entire movie is off-putting in a good way. So overall, yeah, I highly, highly recommend it. Can't really say anything negative about it, as I said before. I mean, even though this is a 2.5-hour movie, pretty much, it's paced beautifully. If you're into horror and you're into body horror, it's perfect for you. This is a wild ride. This is one of the best modern horror movies I've seen, and I highly, highly recommend you check it out. So that's going to do it for me today, guys. If I had to give it a rating, I would say 10 out of 10, honestly. 10 out of 10. Maybe that changes over time, but right now, 10 out of 10. I thought it was fantastic. So I will see you guys later, and take care.